All right, a zooming shot can be used basically to draw your attention to a particular subject, and you can either zoom out to reveal what's around it, or you can zoom in to reveal, and I'm going to demonstrate both of those. And what I'm looking at is the sun through the smoke, and basically if you pull out in your zoom, you start to reveal the rest of the forest and the setting. And in this case, that zoom out, as smooth as you can make it, just reveals and shows more to the audience. And then if you pull back far enough, it didn't quite happen, you would probably see the windowsill that it's looking through. If you zoomed in, basically you're drawing your audience's eyes to the subject. In this case, we're moving back to the sun, and it's another way you can basically reverse the operation to draw focus. And then there are such things as snap zooms, so sometimes you can really quickly go into a subject, and that again kind of draws your eyes quicker and just kind of increases the pace of the shot. And tilting can also be used. I'm just going to use this tree. And tilting is when you're changing the angle of the camera, either down or up, and in this case I'm just following the tree all the way down to its base, and there's that sunshine again. And in this case I'm just trying to reveal the height and maybe exaggerate it a little bit because the camera's zoomed in until I find that base. And again, it's just changing the angle, but you're trying to figure out what it is that you want to see at the end, or what it is that you're showing the audience. I'm just trying to go very, very smooth to that final reveal that it's actually an urban area, suburban area. Panning is when you are basically rotating the camera left or right. It's very similar to dollying left, although you're going to get a little bit different view depending on your location. So you're panning to reveal, you're panning to show geography. Oftentimes, again, you're ending the pan on something important, or beginning and ending the pan on something important. So let's say this computer is a cowboy and they're looking over their shoulder. You can whip pan, I've been using the wrong term, to what it is that they see. Or whip pan back and just guide the audience's eyes to what you want them to look at. And the pan helps you do that. You're basically telling them, what's important in this scene, I want you to see it. What's the surroundings? What are they looking at? What did you find? What just walked in the frame? And that's the pan. When you dolly the camera, you're moving the position of the camera in, out, left, right, but you're trying to do it smoothly. The original dollies were, they still use them, they're on train tracks, and basically the tracks help keep the camera be smooth, but there's also stabilizers and gimbals out there that can give you the same effect. And even if you're using Adobe, there's ways that you can stabilize a shot to try and make it smoother. You can try, sitting in a chair with wheels. There's a lot of ways that you can try to smooth out that dolly. But basically, it's a lot like a zoom, where you can dolly in to draw the audience's attention, or dolly back to kind of pull back, almost like zooming out. It's a little bit different because when you're actually moving the camera, all the references change, all the geography around it. Whereas if you do a zoom, and I'll just demonstrate that here, you're zooming into what you see rather than moving into what you see. And the more things that there are, the more you'll see the difference between a dolly in and a zoom in. I know that wasn't perfectly centered. But you can also dolly to the side, and that could be used to reveal, I'm kind of using the cluttered mess that is my desk as a subject matter here. But if you're dollying to the side, you're kind of showing the audience, and you can kind of imagine what this would be like. This is Mr. Inglis's workspace, setting up the scene and the geography, and continuing to dolly with all the technology and books and things that are up here in this room, and then dolly back out. So again, you can dolly any direction. The key is to try to be smooth while you're making the move. So canting is when you're rotating the camera, and what you're trying to do is maybe capture more information by changing the angle, or just creating a sense of distortion. So if you could imagine a scene where you've canted the camera over, or it slowly starts to cant, as an audience member, you're watching the world kind of turn off kilter. So it's an effect that's used often to create that sense of disorientation within the character or within the scene. So just remember cant. This is a Spitfire, and it's the RAF, Royal Air Force plane that was largely credited with helping to repel the German Luftwaffe during World War II in the Battle of Britain. Happens to be one of my favorite planes. I'm going to use it to demonstrate the tracking shot. Tracking shot just means that you're staying focused on a subject, and there's a lot of ways that you can use tracking. So let's say the subject's in motion, and you're tracking from behind, you're basically keeping that POV of the subject and moving with it the entire time. You can also move from the side, and when you're doing that, the background changes. Or from the top, you're still tracking that subject. Any time that you're moving the camera around it and keeping that subject in focus, that's a tracking shot. So you can also call it, this is called the camera spin around, and it's hard to do with this hand, but again, no matter what you do, you're keeping that subject, you're moving with it, you're keeping it in frame even though it's in motion, and that's how you would use a tracking shot. Craning is basically you're moving the altitude of your camera, and that can again reveal and provide a different look. So I'm going to slowly crane up to a clock that I got from my grandfather when he passed away. It was passed down to me. And again, that clock is my final reveal, and I'm just moving the camera up and down, but up to end on that shot. And again, sometimes you'll see combinations. A lot of times in movies you'll see cranes where they're moving up and tilting down, or moving down and tilting up, which gives you another look at the subject, or doing a variety of combinations with that crane, because they're going up 15, 20 feet, and the camera's also changing its angles and tilt and whatnot. But anyway, that's what the crane is. Just move that arm up and down, get some elevation on it, take a different look at it, and it'll look more interesting for it. The shot will look more interesting. All right, the shift in focus can be used. Some cameras and phones, you can just touch the screen and it'll tell you, it'll change the focus for you. But again, you're drawing your attention, the audience's eyes, to what you want them to see. So I could say, hey, I want you to look at this coffee cup, and now I want you to look at what made the coffee. Back and forth. Or you can go from coffee, maybe you hear a grinder sound, and then whoosh, it's ready. So again, when you're playing with that focus shift, it's just a subtle way to move the camera. It doesn't actually change position, but it's changing how the camera's working. Beyond that, there's a lot of photography skills involved with focal length and depth of field and aperture. You don't need to know that yet. You can look it up, and I'm sure you'll learn a lot online.